Um, and this week we're going to be continuing to expand on how companies manage their costs by discussing bootstrapping for resources, which is how companies can start up with the least cost possible. How could you use the resources that you have on hand? This is a normal entrepreneurial method that's used because a lot of times companies starting off don't have many thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to start their companies. They have to manage their resources and come up with strategies to leverage those resources. So today we're going to define bootstrapping. We're going to identify bootstrapping strategies used by entrepreneurs, what kind of methods they use to keep those costs down, explain the differences between crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. We're going to describe the effects that crowdfunding has had on entrepreneurship as an industry. We're going to describe the different effects of crowdfunding on entrepreneurship. We're going to define the four contexts for using crowdfunding, when crowdfunding could be used, and explain the advantages of crowdfunding for entrepreneurs. We're going to describe the different ways in which entrepreneurs can conduct a successful crowdfunding campaign. Okay, so the notable quote for this week is that waiting until you get all of your funding for all your ideas can be compared with taking the chances of getting struck by lightning while you're standing at the deep end of a pool on a very sunny day. So basically, you're not going to get all the funding that you want. So we're going to start with the 8 components of entrepreneurship. We're going to go back and reflect on our desired impact. So when we started off the semester, I asked you guys to reflect on what it is that drives you. We're going to start with the means on hand. You are going to use the resources that are already available to you, from the things that are financial to the non-financial resources. And we'll elaborate a little bit more on that as we go along. We're going to describe the idea today, not the idea with 100 different features that may not be feasible in the beginning, but we're going to describe the idea as it can be done today. We're going to calculate affordable loss. You have to know what is your max, what is the max amount of debt that you're able to incur without, putting a burden on yourself, your family. So we're going to calculate our affordable loss. Then we're going to take a small action. What are some actions that you can take at the moment that does not require so much financial investment? Then we're going to network and enroll others along our journey. How can we generate a buzz and get excitement going about our product? And as always, we're going to build on what we learned. So if our first iteration is not successful, that doesn't mean that it failed. It just means that perhaps we have to tweak the product a little bit more and refine the features. Lastly, reflect and be honest with yourself. If the idea is not working, if we're getting feedback that shows that there's very little excitement for the product, then we know that that we need to pivot or work on something else. So bootstrapping is a process of building or starting a business with very little funding or capital, or nothing at all. So using the resources that we have on hand. And some of the bootstrapping rules is renting and leasing before buying your personal salary, especially if in the long run you want to take your company public. It's important to minimize your salary so that your income looks as strong as possible, right? You want to reflect a profitable company so that it's marketable on the books, right? You want to use your network and the resources that you have available to you. If you know people in government, maybe you can have them help you with the licenses and the permits that you're going to be needing. And that applies with everything. If you know a lawyer, maybe they can help you with the legal issues that every business owner is confronted with that you need to be able to manage. Or you can offer equity reimbursement, meaning a part of your company. Equity is just the ownership of the company. So you can issue stocks and you can have people become essentially partners with you. And lastly, low operating inventory. starting off, you want to keep your inventory very low. Remember, a couple of $1,000 was what I started with, not very much, and it was enough to get the business going. Okay, so let's discuss what is crowdsourcing. And crowdsourcing is the process of using the internet to attract, aggregate, and manage ostensibly free labor from enthusiastic customers and like-minded people. So through crowdsourcing, we have a platform in which people share information. Instead of guessing what the customer wants, we can cut straight to the source and really key in on what that customer wants in their product. So Patients Like Me is a crowdsourcing website that allows patients to share medical treatment alternatives, and then they're able to monetize this platform by selling that information to the pharmaceutical companies that come up with solutions for these problems. Then we have Local Motors, who allows you to participate directly in the manufacturing process by telling them exactly what you want in the vehicle of your choice, right? So you can customize the features. WikiHouse does the same thing, but allows you to build houses through their 3D printing platform that they have available. Okay, now we're gonna move on to crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is the process of raising funding for a new venture from a large audience, typically through the internet. So now we have a new way of generating revenues for our business that doesn't involve going to the banks for loans or going in front of angel investors or venture capitalists. We can simply raise money by presenting our idea to the public on a crowdfunding website, or maybe through a social networking website, a public platform in which we can share our idea. Very little is known about this, since this is a fairly recent development, but we do have Kickstarter, which is a platform that has created many opportunities and has compiled a lot of data from 48,526 funding efforts representing $237 million in pledges and contributions. We know that failed projects only generated $900 in comparison with the successful projects, who raised on average about $7,825. So the projects that raised most of their money were in hardware, software, games, or product design. Also, geography seems to matter when it comes to raising money. So, for instance, the textbook provides the example that Nashville was very good for raising money when it came to musical ventures because of the associations that exist with Nashville and music. So we see that a couple of things were important for these campaigns to be successful. One, consistent communication about what the product is through videos and websites and social media were very important. Also, the communication with backers is also very important. They have to communicate where they are in product development if there's any delays. One of the main issues that we see when it comes to Kickstarter campaigns, or the main issue I should say, are delays. Only 24.9% of projects are delivered on time. Sometimes, ironically, this could be due to overfunding. As campaigns receive more money for their projects, the expectations increase, and very often this leads to a difficulty to meet these high expectations. Ground rules for using the platform Kickstarter: projects must create something new to share with others. Projects must be clearly presented, and projects cannot raise for fundraising or financial incentives or involve prohibited items. Kickstarter campaigns are usually set for a designated time period. Project creators can build pages that support the product, as we said before, through videos or social media. Also, Kickstarter includes a facility where you get feedback before the product is actually launched. And it allows you to track how much funds have been donated and the amount of backers that you have supporting your campaign. While campaigns are allowed to last up to 60 days, most successful campaigns usually last 30 days or less, with the most contributions coming within the first week. In this section, the chapter discusses how bootstrapping and crowdsourcing can be the first start of the ethical requirements you set for your company. So, by embellishing your product or making false promises, you're setting a corrupt culture uh, to be the norm for your company. So, it's important to determine from the start what kind of uh, principles you're going to stand for. Paradigms exist when it comes to crowdfunding websites. You have the patronage model, in which you have patrons or people who donate money with no expectation of repayments. You have the lending model, in which people are expected to pay back at a designated interest rate. You have the reward-based model, in which different rewards are provided as incentives. And you have the investor models, in which investors are repaid in the form of equity, or if not, they're designated a certain portion of profit that the company makes when the company breaks even. Now, with the patronage model, we see a lot of support being provided to the arts. So Carrie Fertig was able to subsidize her glass-dove wings for the Chichester Cathedral through a crowdfunding effort. The lending model and the patronage model can sometimes be combined. So we have some microfinance loans for social good that although they do emphasize some interest rate, oftentimes they are forgiven and no monetary repayment is required. Then you have the reward-based model. The example provided in the textbook discusses the Coolest Cooler product, which provided T-shirts, DJing at parties, and that was the form of repayment. And this is the preferred method for the Kickstarter campaign platform. Then you have the investor model, in which people become, they gain equity, like I said, or sometimes they're promised the profitability of the company or some proportion of it. And this is a model that is gaining popularity all over the world. So some benefits of crowdfunding: they provide funding, they open up doors where doors were not open before. After the Great Recession of 2007, many entrepreneurs didn't qualify for loans anymore, and this serves as an alternative for many people who don't qualify for these loans. It also offers an opportunity for entrepreneurs to receive feedback. They know right away whether they're on the right track, if their campaign is getting support within that first week, which is the usual trend. It also allows entrepreneurs to build relationships with customers. You start providing feedback about your product, the development. A lot of times, these customers that you communicate with will become your early adopters. And lastly, this is another opportunity for you to generate a buzz about your product. If you can get that momentum going, that initial push, it's going to help your product grow that much faster. So through crowdfunding websites, you're able to promote your product in another way. So some common crowdfunding mistakes is failure to get feedback from the crowd. You want to use the crowd to customize your product. Remember, they're telling you what their needs are, what their desires are. So you want to capitalize on this information and implement it into the product. So use the customer's feedback to create the product through the crowdsourcing platform. Also, provide enough media coverage for them. They should be able to find out about your product through websites, through social media. There should be plenty of media coverage. And lastly, be prepared to deliver. Whether you received all the funding that you required or not, you should be able to execute or provide your product for whatever the demand turns out to be. So if the demand exceeds your expectations, you should be prepared as far as your supply chains are concerned, and how you are going to distribute your product to the consumer. So be prepared.